Mr. Speaker, the numbers are in. $2,400 per Canadian spent last year. That's $171,000 a minute. Yet 47% of Canadians feel they're in a worse economic position this year than last year. And 30% of Canadians, Mr. Speaker, feel that we are already in a recession. Canadians can't afford this costly coalition. So will this Liberal NDP coalition commit to no inflationary spending?
Great question.
The Honourable Minister of Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, let's just look at the record. When the Conservatives were in office, they did nothing to help the most vulnerable Canadians. It is this government that has introduced a Canada Child Benefit, doubling the GST, a $500 top-up on housing supports, cutting childcare fees in half, providing dental care to 500,000 kids. Mr. Speaker, it's the responsible thing. It's targeted. That's our job as a government. We are doing our job.
The member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Speaker, we're opposed to all wasteful spending. That includes $6,000 for a hotel room, $12,000 for groceries in a single month, $54 million for a single application. Yet 53% of Canadians are worried we're going to enter a recession next year. Why is that, Mr. Speaker? Inflationary spending. So will this Liberal NDP coalition commit to stopping inflationary spending?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Families.
Mr. Speaker, I know the Conservatives don't like to admit it, but we're actually coming out of a global pandemic, one of the most difficult periods of time that Canadians have gone through in almost a century. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about extraordinary spending, it's because we supported 9 million Canadians on the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. It's because we supported thousands of businesses through the CEBA, and it's because we supported millions of people through the Canada Emergency Wage supports, Mr. Speaker. That's what we did. That was necessary. It was important. And we made sure we were there for Canadians in their time of need. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. What was not necessary for the government was to take $200 billion of this $500 billion to spend on programs that had absolutely nothing to do with the COVID pandemic, Mr. Speaker. That is the reality of the matter. They hide, they divert in order to avoid telling the truth to Canadians. $500 billion, 40% of which was not for COVID. At the same time, $1.5 million Canadians had to go to food banks over 1 month. 20% of Canadians stated that they had to skip meals because they simply couldn't buy food. When will they stop wasteful spending? The Honourable Minister. When we look at the facts, during the pandemic, the worst pandemic we've seen in over 100 years, this House, this government, made the decision to support Canadians, to support our provinces, our territories, our constituencies and businesses. Stephen Poloz, former Bank of Canada governor, said this allowed the economy to avoid a precipice where we would have known a persistent deflation, a contraction of the economy. The Conservatives don't want to admit it. Those are facts.
The honourable member from Mégantic-L'Érable. The future Prime Minister said that the inflation is mostly caused by domestic issues here in Canada. And what we're saying, that they sent checks to prisoners. They sent CERB checks to public servants and also thousands to We Charity members. $54 million for ArriveCan. A $6,000 suite for the PM. And when will they stop their wasteful spending? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the new economic action plan for them is cutting EI benefits, cutting the pension plan, cutting childcare benefits, cutting climate change action, and that's what they're proposing. Chop, chop, chop. Every of these measures will take money from Canadians' pockets. It's irresponsible. That's their typical Conservative austerity, and that's not our plan. Is to invest in Canadians.
Mr. Speaker, people in Canada are struggling with their mental health, and accessing help is almost impossible. Yesterday, a report found almost all Canadian workers have experienced mental distress, and for many, it's only getting worse. Years ago, this government said it would amend the Canada Labour Code to protect workers, but the Liberals have failed to follow through, just like they haven't delivered on promised new funding for mental health supports. When will the government finally do what's right by delivering on their promises to protect the mental health of workers?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud to say that very soon we will be talking about a mental health policy that will also include the right to disconnect. The world of work has changed so much over the past few years, but particularly during the age of COVID. And we recognize that workers do have a right to disconnect from their employer and enjoy a work-life balance. I look forward to working with members in this House to make sure to make that a reality for workers in this country. Thank you.